Welcome to School Life Unpacked, the podcast for anyone navigating the complexities of their child's education. Join me, Natasha Curtis-Ego, and a lineup of insightful guests as we explore the challenges, joys, and surprises of school life, offering support and tips to help us feel more confident and connected. Today, I am privileged to be joined by a wonderful guest who's going to take a moment to introduce herself, and then we're going to get straight into our exciting topic about early years maths.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Hi everyone, my name's Elaine Taylor-Brown and I work here at Southend City Council, and my job is the Early Years and Childcare Improvement Manager. So basically my role is supporting our settings, so that includes childminders, day nurseries, preschools, nursery classes, right up to reception classes. We support the staff who work in those settings to really help them think about how they can make sure they're providing the very best quality for those children in those early years. But aside from that, I'm also extremely passionate about early maths. I've been working in childcare since I was 18. I'm now nearly 50 and I've had a long career in nursery nursing and teaching, especially early years.
So when we talk about early years maths, could you tell us exactly what that is and what it looks like?
Okay, well, that's a really big question. There's a lot of myth busting we need to do today, really, around what maths is for young children. And I think something really essential to hold on to is that for young children, even from when they're babies, maths is their world. Maths surrounds them. And I think that quite often, because of our experiences of education ourselves, normally secondary experiences as adults, we have quite a set view of what maths looks like. The reality is that children are born mathematical. So anyone listening now, if you've got a baby at home with you, maybe that baby's not even on the move yet, still at that very early stages of development, it might only be a few months old. That baby is already doing things that are mathematical that you might not realise. So perhaps they're reaching out for a toy, or they are looking, there's this concept called object permanence, which is that stage a baby gets to where when they drop something and they finally know, oh, it's actually still existing, I just can't see it anymore. That's all mathematical. Or if you're playing peekaboo with your baby, again, these are mathematical experiences. When we play little songs and little games with our babies, like round and round the garden like a teddy bear, if you have done that with your baby quite a lot, you sort of walk around their palm and you say round and round the garden like a teddy bear, 1 step, 2 step. Now, when you get to that 2 step, if your baby knows that rhyme, they will start to get really excited and they'll start to sort of like maybe try and pull themselves in and start giggling, because they know that after 1 step, 2 step, something's going to happen. They're going to get tickled. They know what's coming. And that's actually the beginning of counting in maths and knowing there's an order of events here. So first of all, mum or dad or nan or granddad, whoever it is, they're going to do round around the garden. Then they're going to start going up my arm. 1 step. 2 step. Oh, I know what's coming next. So even for very small children, even for babies, they are showing us they're mathematical. And then as they get old, and if they're having tummy time, for example, which is so important, on that journey to moving, becoming mobile, a baby on its front, you can see that baby really wants to move. They're everything's going, but not quite linked up yet. If we're putting their favourite toys just out of their reach and they begin to reach for them, and often that's when they begin to move because they've got that motivation, again, that's mathematics. No, it's not numbers, but it's about shape and space, and that baby's learning about, where things are and how far they've got to reach. So for very young babies, I would say they're born mathematical. It's been proven by research that even small babies can recognise and distinguish between big amounts of things and small amounts of things. So it's really interesting. So that's one thing. With your toddlers, again, you're out and about, you're on the bus, they're out in their buggy, you're going to the park, you're going to the beach, you're just around the house, you're having dinner together. There is so much maths potential there. And my big aim of today, more than anything, is A, to break down this kind of misunderstanding about what maths is. B, I really want any carers or, parents, whoever's listening to this today, I really want you to know how critical you are in your child's development. Because you, right now, the person listening to this at home right now, you are building your child's brain. That's your job. that's what you're doing. And the way that we build brains, babies' brains and preschoolers' brains, the way we build those brains is by having really wonderful interactions with our children. And they can be called to and fro interactions or back and forth interactions. And it's this kind of being responsive to our children. And I think as a parent, that can be, we're all perhaps you're like me, you're working, you can't, and it can be really hard to fit everything into your day. I think being a parent can feel really pressured. But I think what I want you to know is those small moments you have with your child where perhaps you're singing a number song, or perhaps you're looking at shapes in the environment, or perhaps you're playing round and round the garden, you're sorting out the socks when you're doing the washing. Those moments of interaction are literally building your child's brain. And that sounds really out there and really what? How am I building a brain? You are.
I don't think it sounds out there. I think what sounds really exciting for me is that it's little things make the difference. So those few moments where, like you said, you're pairing the socks or you're pointing out the shapes, they matter, they're important. And I think that's quite exciting to hear as a parent, because it means it's not about spending hours and hours trying to get them to be the next Einstein. It's actually just sharing time together, doing things that we can do on the move.
Yeah, it's real life things. And, and you can look into more about these back and forth interactions through the Harvard Centre for Developing Child. There's so much research into it. But it is this kind of back and forth that you have with your child. As you said, it's not about cramming them full of information. It's about this sort of two-way. And for when you're with a baby, the two-way might be, they're cooing at you, or they're just, they're responding to you in different ways. But it's the power of connection. That is what grows brains, and that's what helps children learn. And I think that so often as parents and carers, we do things every day and we don't know how important those things are. I ran a session with some parents a little while ago in a Southend centre, and a little session with them about early maths, and they were like, oh yeah, whenever I'm with my child, my baby, and we climb the stairs every day and we go up and down the stairs in our general lives, I count with them every day. They hear me counting 1, 2, 3 as we're climbing the stairs. Now, obviously that baby isn't counting yet. We don't expect them to be counting yet. But the fact that baby is hearing a carer counting every day up the stairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and down the stairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That consistency, that means that child is already learning about counting. They're already having that exposure, that experience. Then as they get older and they're ready for those things more developmentally, they've got those building blocks. So I would say to all of you, those things, I think there's so much that we do. And when we become aware of what we do, when we become aware of our power to help our children learn and those interactions, we can make it even better.
Those little things and the repetition and the consistency, they all help. So what do you say when people say, I'm not a maths person though?
Well, I'd say everyone's a maths person. And I think when I work with sort of staff, in my career, I've been very lucky. I've travelled the country and even parts of the world, not too far from here though, across Europe, sort of working with teachers and practitioners to empower them mathematically to support their children. So many say, well, I'm not very good at maths. Oh yeah, I was rubbish at maths as a child. Do you know what? To help a child learn maths, to make a difference for a child mathematically, you haven't got to have a PhD in maths. Some of the very worst maths teachers, and maybe you met them when you were at school yourself, some of the very worst maths teachers you can meet are really good at maths. What they're not good at doing is helping you to learn it or engaging with you. So I would say, no one's rubbish at maths because, we function. If there was a real life maths PhD, we'd all have it. Right? We get up in the morning, we put our clothes on the right way, hopefully. We make our breakfast, we know we've got to get to, we plan our journey to work, wherever we're going, we get there, we arrange our times, we know when it's time to make our meals, perhaps we're following recipes. So, we are experts at real life maths. There's something we need to do, I think, as a society, is really start to move away from this negative attitude we have towards maths. I'm not saying maths isn't difficult at school. I'm not speaking to someone who had a great maths education and I had to resit my maths after my GCSE. I didn't pass it. I had to resit to go to university. But it doesn't mean I'm not an effective maths teacher.
So when we're looking at early years maths, we're actually identifying it to begin with as real life maths, the maths that really matters to build the bonds for later on. So whether it's you become a maths expert, that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is real life maths that helps our children develop as they are. When we talk about that, could you give us examples of how in reception they'd reinforce that?
Okay, I think the key thing to say about maths as well is because I think at times we've got sort of negative views of maths, and it's been proven again in research that can impact what we do with the children. Okay. So we have to make sure, and it's really important to understand that at the age of 2, your child will not be counting objects accurately, because developmentally, that's not where they are. So it's really important that we look at 2 things here. A, how we engage them mathematically. So everyday experiences, but B, their development. And I'm going to say a really excellent resource for children's development and for you as parents and families and carers to look at is a fantastic BBC website called Tiny Happy People, which talks all about child development, and it helps you understand actually the age my child is at, mathematically, what are the sort of things that they should be doing. Because one of the worst things we can do is try and make children do things that their brains aren't yet wired for. We need to kind of go back to basics. So in terms of reception, there's been quite a shift, I would say, over the years, like in my career, maths teaching in reception in the early years. And it really has now gone much more back to giving children a really solid, deep understanding in maths. So when you go into reception classes, for example, yes, you might hear the children counting out loud with their teachers 20, 30, 40, 50 out loud, but actually the understanding, that deep understanding of numbers and what numbers mean, the focus of reception is up to 10. A lot of parents will say, oh, well, hang on, Mrs. Bloggs, the teacher, or Mr. Bloggs, my child they can already do this. Why are you teaching about number 2 in reception or number 3 in reception? Why are you doing that? That seems too easy, but it's not. It's because we're teaching at a really deep level. So you need to know, for example, we used to call it in the old days, fiveness of 5. Understanding what does 5 mean? What does 5, I don't just mean the numeral 5. If you've got 5 things, if you imagine now you've got 5 buttons in front of you on the table, what can you do with those 5? Or I could have 4 and 1 or 3 and 2, or I could put them in a line, or I could space them like dots on a dice. And in generally in early years, it's about a deeper understanding. It's not about rushing them through. So a common kind of misconception that parents have, and I've been on the receiving end of this many times, but working in schools and nurseries, is parents will say to you, as a teacher or practitioner, my child can count to 20, or my child can count to 10. What your child can do, which is a really important skill, is they can perhaps say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they're a bit like saying Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Children learn the order the numbers go in. So do you see what I'm trying to say? Yeah. So that they learn, it's almost like learning by rote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's counting aloud. That's really important. What that doesn't mean is that if you gave them 8 objects, they can count those accurately.
Because they don't understand the unit, what a unit is so much yet.
They don't understand how to count. They don't understand that when you count, you only say one number for each thing. So quite often you see children miscounting. So maybe they'll sort of count, or they don't stop, they keep going round and round and round. And they're getting all the numbers, they sort of keep going. I've had children before in reception say, how many fingers? They've got 5 fingers, but somehow they count it to be 8 because they're just not matching the numbers correctly to the objects.
Which is what you mentioned earlier, that deep understanding of what a number is.
Yeah, so that's fine. Don't panic and say, oh my goodness, little Johnny isn't counting these buttons accurately. That's part of his journey. But there's a real differentiation, and they're both really important. It's really important that children can count out loud. So that's why in my reception class, my children in reception, we would count to 100. We'd count beyond 100. We'd just count out loud, just saying the names. Yeah. And they love that. That's brilliant. But actually counting objects and having that deep understanding, the focus in reception is to 10. So it's a different thing. So when you're with your child and you're counting the stairs or you're singing number songs, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I caught a fish alive, you're helping them learn the order the number goes in. That's really important. But then also, if you're playing games with dice or dominoes, that's a little bit different because obviously they're looking at the numbers of objects and counting those. And I'll throw one more thing in now. But what you to understand as parents is that because your child can say the numbers out loud in order, that isn't the same as actually being able to count a group of objects. They're different things. Are you with me or have I lost you?
No, I'm with you. Again, it goes back to knowing what a number is and being able to apply it.
Yes, that's it. Exactly. So, you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Brilliant. But actually, do you know, do they know what 5 looks like? And there's a great book for that, which is called 10 Black Dots. Yeah. And it's a really great storybook for preschoolers and reception about, if you've got 10 black dots, because that is what starts at 1, what patterns can you make with them? So there's a lot about exploration. It's really important that we count out loud with children so they get to know the number names in order. But then it's also important we do lots of things that help them see the numbers and count them and practice them. So things like dominoes, things like, dice games. When you roll the dice, you have to move that many spaces on a board, that sort of thing. So it's definitely about the application. But I'm going to throw you into, there's another thing now.
Okay.
That's only really in recent years really come to light as being critical for counting, and is also another big focus of reception, but you will see young children doing it too. And get ready, got a new word for you today.
Okay, I'm excited.
This word is sabotizing. Lovely listeners, if you imagine now, I'm showing Natasha 3 fingers on my hand, right?
Yep.
Now, Natasha, when you look at these 3 fingers, do you have to count them? 1, 2, 3?
No.
Right. So how do you know it's 3?
Because of the pattern your hand makes.
Right, okay. So sabotizing is when we can see an arrangement of things. It will only really be up to, I think it's only up to 5 at the maximum. And we know instantly how many there are. And that's so if you imagine now you're playing a dice game with your child, you roll a dice, they might roll a 2. If your child says, 2, I've got 2, they've sabotized.
Okay, because they recognise the pattern.
Recognise the pattern.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And that's a really important math skill for when children start learning about, adding numbers together or those sorts of things. It's a really important skill. So in school, your children, yes, they will learn the mechanics of actually, you've given them 5 things. They'll learn to count them by touching them and matching the numbers, maybe putting them in a line perhaps. They'll learn that kind of counting skill, but they'll also learn sabotizing. And sabotizing is very much, it's about knowing a number. Yeah. And even little children, even toddlers, will begin to sabotage 1 and 2.
Well, that's really
if you say, give me 1,
yep.
They'll know what you mean, give me 1. So that's another sort of concept that teachers in reception will be working on with your children is sabotizing. And they'll often do it, perhaps they'll show them a picture, how many was it? And quickly hide it. How many was it? And hide it. So they sort of develop that sort of ability to see and recognise numbers. And children are really good at it, and it puts them in really, really good stead for building on the skills that they need next in maths.
It's so interesting. I'm sat here mesmerised. I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm trying to think of all the times that we do that as adults without even realising, if somebody held up their hand and all their fingers were out, we'd know instantly they mean 5.
Yeah.
So it's quite clever. And I didn't realise that it's something that we have to learn, that we're taught. Do you see what I mean?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I really taught it. I think, it is kind of an instinctive, it's about using our perception, isn't it?
But if they're doing it in classes, that means they're encouraging it.
They're encouraging it. And then also, if you think about, the 5 on a dice right now, I bet you can all think what that looks like. So in reception, children will learn that that's 5, but then they'll learn other ways that 5 can look, different arrangements of 5. So it sort of starts to move beyond just, 5 fingers and 5 on a dice. They'll learn other ways that numbers can look. And then as they move on in reception, perhaps towards the end of reception, they move on to sabotizing bigger numbers. My reception children I used to teach, for example, if I showed them a picture of 8 flowers in a vase, and I'd say, what can you see? As they get older, they'll say, I can see 5 and a 3, so that makes 8. So they start to sabotage small numbers in big numbers. But that comes later.
So we don't have to rush them.
No, don't. But even now, if you're playing a dice game with your child, say, oh, look, that, when it's your turn, you roll a 2. Oh, look, I've rolled a 2. Show them, actually, you haven't got to count it, 'cause it's 2, I've rolled a 2. And they'll pick up on that. And then they'll start to do that too. You can tell children who've had lots of experiences of games, because when they roll a dice, they know the number straight away, because they've had all that experience.
So they don't need to count it, they just know
yeah. And the worst thing you can say to a child is, shall we count and check if they're right? Because why don't make them, if they're right, they're right.
But I
if
suppose
they're
we say
wrong, you might say, "Oh, should we just double check that one?"
Yeah.
But if they're right, say, "Do you know what? Yeah, you're sabotaged. It is 6. Well done. Let's have, And I run a session for dads, a math session for dads a couple of years ago. I talked about sabotaging to these dads, and they were like all over it. They loved it. They were like, "Oh wow, I never knew that was what it was called." It's about educating parents and carers, because there is, as a parent, as a carer, you are your child's first and most enduring educator. So yes, they'll come perhaps be in our nurseries or our settings in Southend, or they'll go to their childminder, or they'll go to a school. But those people that look after them, they're only there for so many hours a day, for a period of their life. You are the one who's there all the way through, from the very, very beginning. And I would even say, talked about babies, okay, but we mustn't forget the power of when people are pregnant, talking to the baby, singing songs to the baby, because it can, the baby's listening all the time. And again, then you're building that connection. I think Tiny Happy People is brilliant. Thinking about your child's development, where they're at in development, and what sort of things are right for them. But keep it real. And whatever you do, know this. You haven't got to be a maths expert. You've got to be an expert in your children. And you've got to have this basic knowledge, but you haven't got to have like some high level maths qualification to really help your child. And my next point, you haven't got to spend a lot of money.
Buying all the little books and things, they help, but you don't need them.
You don't need them. What helps your child to be ready, and what, if you think about, the government's agenda of school readiness, whatever that means, children are born ready to learn, okay? We are kind of like, they're like a little plant, a little flower growing in the garden. Our job is to put, to hold the watering can on and give them what they need to nurture and to grow and to flourish. And that's about interaction, and that's about experience. So no, you don't need to go and buy lots of maths books or pay for tutors when they're small. You need to spend time. You need to do things like playing games, going out and about in the park, saying, "Oh yeah, look, shall we go down the slide?" So far, it's a lot about number.
Yes.
But spatial learning is, spatial reasoning, we call it, learning about position and direction, all those sorts of things. "Oh, should we go down the slide?" So with toddlers, we're going down, 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 down. Oh, let's go up, 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 up. All of those things. And also, really underrated, jigsaw puzzles.
Oh, I do love a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah, jigsaw puzzles for your children. I cannot tell you the benefit of a jigsaw puzzle for your child, okay? Again, you've got to think about their development.
Okay.
And, where they're at in their development. So make sure you're getting the right sort of jigsaw puzzle. So not too hard, not too easy. And for babies, it'll be literally, lifting ones at first. Puzzles are phenomenal for children's spatial thinking. And I think there's been quite a decline in children doing jigsaw puzzles.
Do you think that's because we're slowly shifting towards more screen time?
I think so.
No, I'm not as in a judgmental way. I look at all the games and things and all the apps that come up when you're looking through, and they're puzzles on your phone, and there's all these things on the phone. And I always think, oh, but it'd be nice to pick up a piece and have to try and place it in place. And I think sometimes we think, oh, but it's on the tablet. But it would be nice, I think, also to
it's real life
experience where they can touch and feel is important too.
And, when you do a puzzle, maybe I'm showing my age now, but my mum taught me that you do the corners first and you do the edges and then you fill in the middle.
Yep.
So if you think about that, maybe you were taught that, maybe you weren't. But if you think about finding the corners, the child's got to know what is a corner, what makes a corner, what makes an edge.
Yeah.
And then imagine you're doing the puzzle and you're trying to build the puzzle. You're looking at the picture on the box. So you're having to look at that picture and then work out positionally, how's that going to fit in here? Which piece will it be? Puzzles are phenomenal. And I think people think, oh, they're a bit old fashioned maybe, or do you say it's online?
Yep.
But nothing can beat that real hands-on, and also sitting alongside a child and forget the maths for a minute. There's the resilience. If a piece won't fit, if it's not working, if it's not happening, there's the attention. Because just as I've talked about, how important interactions are for brain development of your child, what also is important is, when your child, if you think for a minute of something your child loves doing, think of those things where your child completely is so engrossed. And that could be, it could be digging in the mud. It could be drawing. It could be doing a jigsaw puzzle. It could be playing with their toys. Those moments when children are so deeply engrossed in their learning, perhaps their tongue's coming out, their brows down, perhaps you're calling, they can't even hear you because they're that focused. In those moments, evidence has shown, and some great research has shown, that when children are deeply engaged like that, their brain is developing.
That's awesome.
So engagement is so important.
Yeah.
Now, we know that obviously, small children, engagement, attention can kind of be short. But we also know with small children, sometimes you'll be like, wow, I can't believe he sat and done that for that amount of time at that age. And yesterday, actually, I was at an event that we were hosting, and we set a stall up of activities. And we really wanted to show parents really simple things you can do at home, because that's a big focus of my job. My job is supporting settings, but also we want people to understand settings and families. You can have an impact with really simple resources. I watched a little girl yesterday. We'd set up a washing line with loads of socks, okay? Clean socks, obviously. Stripy socks, spotty socks, pink socks, blue socks. And this child sat at this washing line. I can't tell you how long she sat there for, just matching the socks, comparing the socks, pegging the socks up.
Oh,
and in
so
that
cute.
time, and then around her, there were bouncy castles, there were goats and sheep and ponies and babies, and there was people splashing water. But she was so engrossed. And it wasn't a tablet. It wasn't some big fancy, plastic toy. It was literally a washing line with some socks and pegs. And in that moment, this is the thing, in that moment, you might think that's nice, little whatever her name was, she's hanging some socks up there. She's being mathematical. She's organising them, she's matching them, she's arranging them on that line that they've got enough, they're not too crowded, they're not too close together, they're not too spaced out. She's looking for, can I find a pair that matches? So mathematical. And the beauty of it is while she's doing the clothes pegs, that's developing what we would call her fine motor skills, her developing her hands, which then is going to help her in school when she's learning to write.
So everything impacts and builds upon as it goes.
Hanging socks on a washing line. So take that with you. You haven't got to be doing all singing, all dancing activities. And there's a great video that I saw on YouTube. I must see if I can find it. A great video where this mum has got a toddler or a baby in a high chair, and she gives him toys. But she gives him two things at a time. One thing is a toy, and one thing is a real life object, like a wooden spoon or a saucepan. Mm-hmm. So she keeps putting down on his tray two things, one toy, one everyday object. She does it loads of times. Each time, do you think that child chooses a toy or the everyday object?
They're going to choose the everyday object.
Everyday object.
Because they recognise it, and it must appeal because you see mum using it, or you see it around you. So you know what it is, and you can adapt it to. And then you're getting the imagination going as well, right? So
it's like, when you buy children Christmas presents and, maybe you spent a load of money on something, I'm going to say, right? You spent all this money like, oh, yeah, okay, we give them this present, brilliant. Give them the present, they open it, thanks, mum, thanks, dad, whatever. Oh, where's Johnny? Oh, it's actually inside the box now. So the toy that you've, maybe it's a motorbike thing you spent loads of money on, it's actually in the box.
Yep. We've had that a few times.
Because it's that real, open-ended, those are the things that fascinate children. I mean, when I was teaching, I spent thousands of pounds on these wooden blocks, which are phenomenal wooden blocks for children to build and create with. And they love these wooden blocks, right? So we spent all this money on these wooden blocks. Oh, where are the children? All the wooden blocks are there. Where are the children? Oh, they're just in the boxes, which are like massive, like tunnels now. And I'm like, okay. So we did that. We went with that. We didn't say, excuse me, children, why aren't you using the blocks? We're like, okay, you want to be in the boxes? Let's go. Let's make an obstacle course. And I think in terms of maths, again, that's something you can really do easily at home is in, if you've got access to outdoor space or, in a park, build some little obstacle courses for children. Things to go up, things to go down, things to go over, because those are great whole body experiences that children love. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And I think it's just about coming back to play with real things. Hots. We all know about, hopefully you all know about mud kitchens. A lot of schools have mud kitchens now, okay? The children don't want a big fancy mud kitchen. What they want is some mud, some pots, some pans, some spoons. And you can do that at home if you've got a little digging patch or something. It's the children love real things, and real things are great for maths because they're about real life.
So basically we have to change how we view maths. It is not just about numbers. It's actually about everyday maths is our world. And that's how we have to look at it.
Yeah. And I think, wherever you're listening to this now, unless you're driving, obviously, if you're in a room right now, look around you. The room you're in is full of maths. The room we're in now recording this is full of mathematics. How, the patterns on the windows, we've got some blinds up, some blinds down, how the chairs around the table. There's maths everywhere. And that's what we want children to see. So when you're out and about with your child, when you're walking down the road, even if they're in the buggy or the pram, just chat to them. If you're on the bus, look at that over there. Oh, look at that shape. Or look at those numbers. Or look at the pattern. And look at the pattern those birds are making in the sky. Draw their attention to all of those things.
Maths in the real world sounds so different to maths in a classroom. And I think that's really exciting for a lot of parents who maybe had that maths phobia and they're like, oh my goodness, numbers. But when you look at it as a whole and you're looking at maths, like you said, as patterns, as shapes, as the physics of which our body goes through, and we're building those tiny little blocks, it can be really exciting.
Yeah.
For the parents who are more sporty, we can do the obstacle course, and that's still building something mathematical in our children's brain. For the parents who enjoy cooking, they can do cooking together, measuring out the recipes, that's all the numbers. Or for the parents who just want to play, that's still
Exactly. And if you think, if your child, for example, loves dinosaurs, for example, you could make like a dinosaur world with your child. You could get some old boxes and bits and pieces, and you could, maybe some fake plants. You could create a whole dinosaur world, and you could put some dinosaurs up high and some down low, and all of through that, just develop loads of maths talk. So I think it is about the fact that I think we have to accept as children get older and they go into school, as they're going through primary school into secondary school, maths is abstract because maths is an abstract subject.
By this you mean?
Well, when they start, I'm thinking about my son when he was doing GCSE maths, come and ask me for help, I'd be like, oh my goodness. But that's just because they're not things that as adults we're learning every day anymore. Okay, so when your child goes to school and perhaps they're in primary and they're bringing home maths homework and you're like, oh my goodness, what do I do with that? What you mustn't do is say I'm rubbish at maths.
Okay.
Because that then, that your children look up to you, they idolise you. And we don't want to give them this impression that actually maths is really hard, scary, and nobody can do it. So you will find that maths, as children get older, is taught in a different way to how you were taught it. So what you do is you say, okay, well, do you know what? I wasn't taught like this, so let's look into it together. And again, there'll be things you can find online, or we'll go back to the school. Quite a lot of schools will run sessions for parents where they'll sort of talk about, different ways of learning maths.
Yeah, because it does look quite different.
It does look different, doesn't it? And it can look scary. And especially if you're at school and you found, like I did, maths really hard, it can kind of almost take you back to that place again. But I think just realise that that's fine, and maths is a bit different now. But, there are tools out there that can help you. There'll be websites you can use. You can always go and speak to the school first, say, I'm trying to help him, I'm a bit stuck on this, could you give me some resources to help me? And they will. But that's as they get older. The key thing for you in the early years is you are starting their journey with them.
Yeah. So it is looking at early years maths completely different. Don't worry about later on. Let's focus on early years maths and it being the world around us.
The world around us, and the fact you're putting in place those building blocks. You are building for what comes later. Okay. So when you're talking about sabbatising or, doing that with them, that looking and knowing numbers straight away, when you're doing your number songs, when you're playing your dice games, you're rolling down there, moving around the board, that is part of what comes later. Because when they get to school, they'll start doing things like using a number line, for example.
Yep.
Yeah.
Heard that term.
Right. Or a number line or a number track. Yeah. So, or a tens frame. They have to use these little frames they use in school now called tens frames. They'll use all these things in school. But what you're giving them in the early years is giving them almost the pre-knowledge for that. Okay. So, maths is in the world around us, definitely. But it's also about the foundations you're putting in place.
So that they can understand.
Yeah. So if you're doing, there's lots of counting songs we can do with children. I'm sure there'll be lots on the Tiny Happy People. And lots of counting songs we can do, like 5 currant buns, all those sorts of things. When you do 5 currant buns with your child, and maybe you do it on your fingers, maybe you actually have maybe you make some little buns with them. Doing that song with them is helping them learn about subtraction. which is then going to help them when they get into school and as they're going through the school. So you are giving them the foundations. You are putting in place those very early building blocks of maths, which everything else will stand upon. And that's why, as a teacher, and in my job that I'm in now, we talk about the early years foundation stage, which if your child's in a setting up till the age of end of reception, they come under the early years foundation stage, because that's the phase of life. Those first 5 years are so critical. It's when those building blocks are put into place. And as a parent and carer, you have a huge role in that, in building their brains, having those interactions, having those everyday experiences with your child.
As we said earlier, having those connections is so important. And like we mentioned before, they don't have to be big things. And I think that's the takeaway from today, that not only is early years maths so important and fundamental for your child's development, it's not what we thought it looks like. It's not just about numbers. Counting back and forth are important, but it's understanding it in our real world and being able to then count numbers and understand what numbers are. And I think it also relieves a bit of pressure as a parent, because yes, we're our child's first educator, but it's not necessarily in the pressurized environment of school. It's actually through the little connections and bonds that we build.
All of those moments. And, I'll say it again, the Tiny Happy People website is phenomenal, because it will give you lots of really short clips of perhaps songs to sing with your child, or activities, things you can do at home. And they're of real families doing real things with their children. So that's a really great website. Another really good website, I think, as a resource I want to sort of direct you to, I work as part of something called the Early Childhood Maths Group, and they've got something called Family Postcards. So you can go on their website, it's the Early Childhood Maths Group, Family Postcards. You can have them in all different languages, and they are little prompts for when you're out and about with your child, or when you're at the shops, or when you're playing games, any of those things, little things that you can say to your child to have those interactions with your child. They're little prompts. They're really brilliant postcards.
They sound really amazing.
They are good. I'll send you the link for them. So there's so much out there, because at the moment the government have got a really big focus on. They just released a document which is called Giving Every Child the Best Start in Life. So, have a look at it. It's really important. It's something that, as a government, their focus really is on giving children that very best start. And a big part of that is about families and what we call home learning environments. Because we know from all the research, yes, being in a good preschool makes a difference. We know these things make a difference, but what makes a difference massively is what happens at home, and in terms of your environment and how you have those, making the most of those interactions with your children. And I think once you know the difference you can make, and once you're aware of what you're already doing, you can do it even better.
So true. This is true. And that's the point of why we sat down today, just to, like you said, bust a few myths, get people to understand that it is little things that you do that are so important, and all together will make a massive impact on your child's start to their journey throughout school and life.
And throughout life. I think that's the thing we mustn't forget. What happens in those first 5 years is so important for what comes the next 90 years. So those we mustn't underestimate. And I think sometimes parents might think, oh, well, they'll do that at school. Oh, they'll do this at school. They'll do that at school. Or they'll do this at nursery. It starts with you. It starts from pregnancy. It starts with you talking to them before they're even born. It starts with babies, all those things you're doing with them. And it's always, whether it's learning about maths or anything, whether it's learning about English, anything you're learning about reading, writing, it's all about connection. And for children in the early years, it's all about play. It's about play and connection.
If you were to give us 5 little tips of fun things that we could encourage our little ones to do, what would they be? I like asking this question because it kind of, so I know you mentioned jigsaw puzzles.
Jigsaw puzzles are great. Songs, number songs and rhymes.
If you're in our area in Southend, our libraries do a really, really wonderful morning sessions, which is story rhymes, and you can go along and they're really fun. If you're not sure of which songs, they do quite a lot of number songs, and my little ones loved it. It's only 30 minutes. They do 2 sessions at different libraries throughout the week. And if you wanted to learn some songs, I know there's YouTube, but if you wanted also to go somewhere, I would recommend the libraries. they really get.
Exactly. I mean, I think, you can look on YouTube and find songs, but what I would say to you then is for you to sing the songs with them, not just put them in front of YouTube.
Oh, no, I wasn't. Okay,
I know you weren't saying that.
Like when someone says to you, oh, sing a nursery rhyme, and you go blank.
Yeah.
Or if nursery rhymes weren't really sung to you as a child.
Yeah.
We take it for granted that everybody knows nursery rhymes, but that's not always the case.
So again, the Tiny Happy People has got lots and lots on there that you might think, never heard that one before. And they just really show that joy of the parent and the child singing together, and they reflect all different types of families. So I would say I would look at that, probably not YouTube, but number rhymes. So I would say puzzles, definitely. Number rhymes, stories, all those sorts of things are really great. Get outside, make it active, go to the park, go to the beach. If you've got a garden, get out in the garden and explore math and look at numbers and look at shapes outside and all that big body stuff. I mean, if your child likes playing football, for example, kicking a ball around, there's maths in that. Because obviously I'm to kick the ball and aim it the right way. So I think it's about getting outside, everyday moments, everyday routines, whether it's setting the table together at mealtime, whether it's cooking together, whether it's sorting if you're really brave, maybe help them do some washing together, depends how brave you are, those sorts of things. And I think I would say those open-ended resources, letting children explore real things, pots and pans, all those sorts of things, and sort of exploring those things together, because they show children that actually maths is real life.
Yeah.
And you haven't got to do it from a workbook or from an app. Actually, look, maths is about real stuff. A lot, I know in school, children used to love doing something called junk modelling.
Which is...
The parents didn't always used to love it so much. It's basically where the parents the children make models out of boxes and bits and pieces. And
I think that's still a favourite at our school.
I'd be sending children home and see the parent thinking, oh my goodness, what has she done with them today? But at home, a lot of us in Southend now doing recycling. Just save some of your boxes and let children create things. If they're creating models, again, that's really mathematical. And a really great tip, actually, I had from a nursery was with their boxes. Like if you've got like a box of cornflakes, for example, if you sort of unfold the box and turn it inside out and sort of a bit of masking tape, the children then draw all over it. So obviously the inside of the box is on the outside, and it's easier for drawing on or painting. Whereas obviously drawing on a shiny box is quite difficult. Yeah. Those are my tips, I think. So see if I can go through them again. Puzzles and games all day long. Jigsaw puzzles, but things like dominoes. Well, children can't play. And I don't mean dominoes like Peppa Pig dominoes. I mean a number, with the spots on. Yeah. Dominoes and dice games, board games. Can't think of what I said now.
Getting outside.
Real life experiences, books, songs and rhymes, and open-ended resources. And I think just know that you as a parent are enough and you're doing your best. And what makes a difference is those interactions. And we all have moments where perhaps we're not the best parent we'd like to be. But, we're all human. We're doing our best. And just know that what you're doing is enough.
And it doesn't have to be the big, like you said earlier, big, all singing, all dancing. It's the small things that make the biggest difference.
The fact that maths is so much more than numbers and counting, I would say, is about we call it spatial reasoning. So all of those, just everyday play. There's maths everywhere. We just kind of need to know it's there.
So on that note, thank you so much, Elaine, for joining me today. It's been exciting, educational, interesting, and I hope, like me, other people are going to go away thinking maths really is everywhere, and being reminded of that, and take away the pressure of the numbers for just the early years, and we can worry about numbers in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. And we truly appreciate you listening. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, subscribe, and follow to stay updated on future episodes. We look forward to seeing you next week.